So if our information has been harvested by a full service propaganda machine without our permission, and we're shown how that was done in the last video from The Guardian, how do we actually protect ourselves from being screen slaved? How do we figure out what the difference is between spurious and between online information? Radar, which we've already discussed in this in this lecture, sorry, in this module, is an example of this, because I think we're beginning to see people claiming, putting up news that is to the untrained eye not real. It's made up. It looks professional when it's online. It looks the same as every other news source, and it isn't. We're beginning to see news that is biased. We know that there are entire news stations that will present news and will warp the news to fit somebody else's political agenda. And this is dangerous because it means that people end up putting their trust in news sources that serve very, very wealthy individuals and a very, very small group of people, and allows them to do whatever they want because they use the news source to deflect attention away from what it is that they've been doing. And they make up, enemies. George Soros is somebody who seems to be always named as if he was that there are so many conspiracies about this person who's put most of his resources into protecting the natural world and trying to come up with socially positive initiatives through his investments. But he has been made a figure of hate by groups who we're not even sure who they are, who make up lies about him a lot of the time. Even if you don't know who he is, you might have come across that name beforehand. At the present time of recording, there are people even in Ireland claiming that COVID-19 is a myth and have developed conspiracy theories around it. So such dangerous. Such dangerous behavior, and really important that we're conscious of what the motivations for these people are. So Radar was developed by Jay Mandalias with a view to helping people evaluate these resources that they encounter online, to figure out which ones should you pay attention to or not. And we've already done this. So just briefly, to go over it, we look at the relevance of the resource to whatever it is that you're using it for, the authority of the person or the organization that put it up, the date that it was published, how it appears, and the reasons that the person had for I'm going to say writing, but let's talk about publishing it online, the reasons that they did. So you'll know this already from Radar already, but where we really talk to about in terms of an academic assignment, we ask how each source is relevant to the problem that's been set to you. But more importantly, how the sources you've used are more relevant than other ones. And this is a key step in introducing critical thinking skills for people. So we're trying to figure out, why is it that, some sites that make up fake information about, say for example, the extent and the urgency of the extent of climate change and the urgency of addressing it in its various shapes and forms through policy or practice or behaviors or whatever. Why would somebody put up a source on that? Or often people who are who deny climate change or try to project the denial of climate change will use sources that aren't relevant and don't address what the key points are, because climate change is quite a complex thing and it's a difficult thing to model. The authority of the person. You work as a detective and you do background checks on the author or the source of your information, and this means you could use Wikipedia, but bear in mind that a lot of the open source resources that are out there are themselves susceptible to being edited by people. I mean, I came across one in the lead up to Brexit that looked at opposition to a Wikipedia page that looked at the opposition to opposition to Brexit in the UK, and the source blatantly said that most of the opposition was funded by sources outside the UK, which is not true. So that was taken care of and fixed. And Wikipedia, in fairness to them, were very concerned about the ability about the truthfulness on their sites. We've got the institutional profile pages of researchers. You can look at, as I said before, scholargoogle.com if somebody is claiming to be an expert on a topic or is claiming to be, the authority on somebody. Look at Google Scholar. It'll give a citation page for each academic out there, and it'll tell you how much their work has been cited. Now there are more specific ones as well, like harzing.com, but this just generally gives you a sense of how well an individual academic is regarded in relation to the research that they do. And not claiming to have any high scores there myself. In fact, if you check my own one, you'll see that the opposite is there, but I do my best. The date is the next thing, and this is the important thing that Mandalia says, that students develop an automatic date checking instinct. So for literature review, look at where your information originated from, seek out the first, last, and best. Best probably is, but not always, but is, probably the most indicative piece of research in the field is the one that has been most cited. Use the Social Sciences Citation Index for this. Appearance, what does a bona fide piece of research look like? Is it a proper journal article? I mentioned before in resources on Radar that you should check for business, if you're a business student, look at the ABS ranking, which will give you a clear indication of the quality of business journals. And if a journal, they often have very grandiose titles with international or the global journal of whatever, we're checking that on the ABS journal guide, because you can practically sit in your back bedroom or on the bus or wherever it is you can find a place to be, and make up something very easily that looks like an official journal, but it's not. So it's important to be familiar what bona fide pieces of research look like. And then finally, the reasons why people actually wrote the articles. Are they trying to convince you of an idea? Are they making up lies? Are they trying to get people to come on board? Are they trying to sell you a consulting product or a training service? Are they trying to save anything? Are they trying to make money out of you? Are they on a personal mission? Or are they interested in participating in a research community? What journals are, they're not meant to be read like, magazines or news sites or anything like that. Academic journals are the conversation that scientific communities have amongst themselves. When you complete a piece of research, it's considered only really complete when it has been published or accepted in a journal. So, for example, when you complete a piece of research, you write it up to be submitted in a peer-reviewed journal. Usually an editor will look at it and put it into the associate editor level of things if they feel it deserves a greater look. If it's completely wrong, they'll reject it at that stage. An associate editor, you have editorial boards and associate editors that are on journals. They then review it, and they will go through a system and check other people to review this then in turn. And these are usually people who are participating voices in whatever field of research is taking place. These are people who have an interest in making sure that the best quality research is produced and is published. So they'll be as critical as they can in this, and often they'll urge that it be rejected, but usually what happens is it gets sent back for at least 2 or 3 rounds of revision, that you revise the article, you resubmit it to them, to the journal, and they double check this again, and they say, yes, you've answered certain parts of this, but we still have questions about another. And often publishing an article, publishing a piece of research is a process that can take 2 years before it's accepted, and then maybe another year to 18 months or even longer before it's published. So you're looking at a 4 to 5 year cycle of getting something from, it's the stage where you've written it up, at most a 4 or 5 year cycle, at getting it, at finish the writing of it, to when it's finally accepted in a journal article. So academics don't get paid any commission for submitting these articles. In fact, universities fund they pay as part of consortia agreements. They pay the journal publishers for this process that goes behind these things being brought to light. So there's a lot of work that academics do voluntarily in reviewing and approving the work that their fellow colleagues in their community have done. And the reason for this is that this is a system of checks and balances, and it's time consuming and it's frustrating. And the rewards are just seeing the thing published in print at the very end of it, and it's just about participating in a scientific community where everybody is critical of each other's works for a reason. And the reason is that we're all committed to truth, that the truth has to be communicated at the end of this. And this can mean that you sometimes waste years on an article that never gets published because people cannot stand over the truthfulness of what they think it is that you're trying to communicate, which is why it's a tough environment to be in from a research perspective, but it's also very, edifying. Don't want to put anybody off a research career. But on the other hand, compare this to somebody who makes up something, who scans, through the internet, finds whatever it is that they want to do, often tweaks it or changes it, or sometimes just blatantly misrepresents it, puts it into an article, publishes it, and then claims to be an author for something. This is, we see this at different levels. We see some people trying to promote themselves as an authority or an expert in a field, and, maybe they're doing that because they want to make some money or whatever. But on the other hand, we've got people who make up horrible lies about different groups and races and religions, and people who identify in different ways to ones that they do. They make up lies about the climate, about pandemics, about about lots of things, and they present it as if it went through that same half decade's worth of work for a single piece of work that social scientists or political scientists or natural scientists make in their one. And the problem is that they can often make it look more convincing than the hard, boring statistical work that goes into producing a piece of research. People will be oriented towards, something that is more consumable than other work that is, might be like a salutary product on Kotler's thing that will bring you long-term gains, but is difficult to read in the short term. This is why tools like Radar are critically important for every individual, for helping them to identify what fake news is and how it works for people. So what we've seen is a need for ourselves to be data ethical means that we have to be cynical about the work that we're reading. And it also means that we have to be very untrusting in how we share our own data. This puts pressures on organizations to meet the regulations like the General Data Protection Regulation, to make sure that they're not violating people's breaches, but also allows them to take on board approaches such as privacy by design to make sure that they're ensuring that everybody's data is kept safe and secure and protected in the most moral and ethical way possible.